For APAC specifically, we see a lot of exciting opportunities within our core verticals of customers that include a lot of payment companies and more so marketplaces, right? So I think there's really two core focus for us in APAC within our kind of customer base. One key area is kind of our the large majority of our customer base that's expanding to APAC, maybe from North America and Europe, right? We've been serving these customers for maybe a number of years, and they see Southeast Asia as an exciting opportunity to expand their payment businesses, remittance businesses, as well as marketplaces. So we help them to verify their users, their sellers to different marketplaces. But the other, I think, exciting opportunity for us in Asia is actually the other way around, right? We're seeing a lot more exciting new companies coming out of Asia going to overseas, right? So, I think if you think of 10 years ago where if you want to name 10 biggest global companies in the world, all of these companies probably sit majority in the US, right? The Airbnb, the Uber, the Amazon of the world. But now I think there is more and more willingness in both Southeast Asia and China looking to seek more opportunities overseas. I think they have a lot of learnings, a lot of advantages that they have, including talent in the domestic market, and then to apply some of these practices in overseas. We see the likes of like a TikTok, like a local companies that's based out of Singapore to expand overseas and seeing a lot of exciting opportunities around that as well. Out of all the regions, Asia Pacific, I'll say it's the most complex for compliance practices in terms of, if you look at some markets like North America or Europe, right? There's differences between market to market within each region, but the nuances are not as big, right? A lot of these identity verification or KYC practices could be government driven, could be credit bureau driven, right? And then you layer on top of latest technology on taking maybe perhaps a picture of your document, of your passport to do authentication. But when you look at Asia, right, it's a very fragmented market in terms of government infrastructure, in terms of the availability of data, in terms of compliance requirements. It's a little bit all over the place, but also that's kind of where Trulioo's strength lies, right? We help to manage different nuances within each region. To give you some example, right? For example, China is very driven by the local government infrastructure program, where we have connections and partnerships within local government entities to integrate with their local system to verify their national IDs. And another example is Australia, right? It's also another very government-driven infrastructure to do KYC, AML, right? So we are a licensed partner of the Australian government to do these kind of services. And then when you look at Southeast Asia, that's where maybe the infrastructure, some of these countries' infrastructure maybe is not there compared to like Australia, like a China. That's where we lay in some of the latest technology on AI, ML to help them to verify maybe the passports in some of these countries, as well as getting information from different government registries where possible. Absolutely critical. Truly, I think our company, our value really relies on a lot of our partnerships across the globe, right? In Asia, we have many local partners that including government, including credit bureaus, including some of the technology players locally who might be specializing in these areas where we help to partner and then become an expert ourselves in in the global platform, right? Where some of our global payment customers come to us to say they want to verify someone in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Australia. We can help them to give that insights arise from these partners that we have, and then provide them the standard practice, which how they typically would use our products, but in these different markets. I think culture plays in that role, and that kind of goes back to my point earlier, right? It's a little bit fragmented culture as well. There's a lot of subcultures within the APAC regions, right? I think it really depends on kind of what people grew up with, right? And if they're used to say, hey, this is the practice. I grew up in China where all of the services we entered, we use our national ID card, right? And then that's kind of the norm we've been used to. Then I just use my name, date of birth, address information, and I can get verified through that way. I think that's one thing. And then Singapore, we're here today, right? We're here now. Singapore has implemented SingPass in the last 10 years, which is being a huge success and is probably one of the most successful digital identity programs that's in the world. And that's being adopted almost by every single person that's living in Singapore, which then now that becomes the norm of this country, right, to do identity. So it really depends on kind of the government regulation, the government infrastructure, and what you kind of grew up with in terms of your experiences in this industry. Extremely important in terms of education, but also varies depends on the types of customer and the industry you're in, right? So to give you an example, kind of what I mean by that, if you're talking to say a large bank, right? They probably have, and if they're in say multiple markets, they probably have hundreds of thousands of different compliance people within each market to really focus on. One is to make sure they're compliant to the regulation, but another piece is they have probably like a large manual team to do a lot of these compliance reviews and make sure all of their clients are compliant to their standards. But that gets a lot more challenging when you look at like a fintech, right? A technology player where they have the ambitions, right, to become that kind of scale of a bank to be in a lot of these markets. But in terms of resourcing, in terms of the scale they have in terms of their compliance team, it's not going to be as they can't match the bank level of resourcing, right? So in that sense, it's really important to educate our compliance users, our product users in each of these fintech companies, to educate them the different nuances within each market and what are the best practices. A lot of times, these are regulations, right? But in other times, right, a lot of customers leverage Trulioo on industry expertise and industry benchmarks, right? Because we work with a lot of the top players within payments, within marketplaces, within crypto exchanges. So across the board, we can kind of tell what are some of the best practices within the industry, and we can share that insight to our customers who might be maybe a newer player in some of these markets. I think for Trulioo ourselves, our infrastructure is built to scale globally, right? From day one, our vision is to work with global customer who has a global vision, because to solve this compliance problem in one market is not too difficult, but when you're looking at this problem and then you times 100, that's where really Trulioo values lies, right? But so that we kind of had that mindset of building our own infrastructure on a global scale from day one. But in terms of kind of the actual data infrastructure and then the market infrastructure, that really relies on a lot of the local government as well as local enterprises to scale that. And we see a lot of exciting projects. Singapore is obviously the perfect example for that kind of building out that infrastructure, and that can scale very, very easily and very quickly. We see some of these similar programs in the likes of China, in the likes of Malaysia, right? So we're seeing more and more of that, and then we we're very positive on kind of where the trend is going forward. But that is, to a point, it is still a challenge to manage these different silo regulation practices in each of the region, especially in APAC today. It's funny. So we only been in Singapore for 2.5 years so far. But when we came in, it wasn't the focus wasn't, oh, now we're in Singapore, now we want to expand to our APAC presence. We actually have a tons of customers in APAC already, and then one of the major goals to be in Singapore, to be in APAC, is so we can work a lot more closer with our customers in this regions, right? So I think over the course of last 1 or 2 years, we see a lot more expansion project from the APAC customers going overseas. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the goal for next year or so is to understand what are some of the culture differences and challenges for them to go overseas, because we have the tools, we have the solutions that's ready to go to help them to scale. But for them, what are the challenges specifically for the APAC that we can help to solve? Maybe that's a solution problem. Maybe that's some of a communication problem, right? So we're here to help work very closely with our customers to help them to grow overseas. And then, I think this is a super positive sign for this region, that a lot of these companies here are making it onto a global stage, and we're here to support that.